Okay, so let's talk about the DML statement, DDL statements, right? So let's start with the create. Okay, basically you would use create to create any database or a database objects. In this aspect, we are connecting to this database, right? So let's go and create a database. Okay, let's create database. Say I'll say uh, December 29, 27. 2017. Okay, I'm just putting a random name. I want to use this as my database name. Okay, so that's it. So if I give this information, create database name, and execute it, it's gonna create a database for me. And then if I refresh my databases on the left side, you would be seeing the database in here, right? So this is my database name, December 27 to 2017. I do have other databases. I could give you any friendly name to do it, but as an example, I just chose it, right? So whenever you create a database, we spoke about this thing earlier. You would get in two files, that which is MDF file and LDF file. Just to reiterate the same thing, I'll show you those things, and those things are pretty much sitting on the same C drive and all those things. Okay, where everybody's data file and log file would sit. Eh, In general, if you have multiple drives on the same server or system, you could change those into respective drives, whichever is log drive and whichever is the data drive. We could use that opportunity. Okay. So in this one, as I spoke to you guys earlier, we do have system databases, right? Like MSDB, model, and all. So this the database which we created, okay, is exact copy of model. So whatever you would see in here model, let's say you do not see any tables, you do not see any system tables, you do not see any views, there could be some system views in there, but whereas synonyms, all of the things are pretty much as is, are being stored in here. Okay, you'll get an exact same copy of the model database. So if you go inside in there, you could see that there are system tables and file tables, views, all those folders would appear. Okay, so with this command, you can create you could create a database. Okay, let's go into detail of creating a table. Okay, because it is the main storage unit of the RDMS system, right? So let's create a table. So create table. I would say dbo.student. That's my table name. Wanna be okay? And in this table, I have two columns. One is his ID, student ID in general, and then I would take a name, okay, which can be a varchar of size 20 or 30 characters. Let's put 30. Okay, that's our character size, and this is what our table is going to be. Okay, so in this query window, it is exactly pointing to master, right? When we created this database, I would like to point to that database. Okay, if I do go ahead and run this statement in the master, it's going to create a table inside this master database, which I don't want to happen. I want to create inside the database I just created, right? So either I would say use this database and say go. If I execute this one, right down in the bottom, you can see that it's connected to master. It's going to change here as well as here. So if I execute this one, so now you see that the database name has changed here and here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create a table. Okay. So this is how my create is going to be used. So now let me refresh my tables in here so that I can see the data table, right? So there you go. This is my table. Okay, and if I open my columns, I could also see the ID column as well as the name column in here. So let's say my manager comes back to me and says, "Oh, Sandeep, you have created this table, but I don't want it as a one single name column. I want it as two columns, that is first name and the last name. I have to alter this table, right? So the way I would do is, I would say alter table. Okay. and I'm going to give the table name, which is dbo.student, alter table name. Okay, then I'm going to add, okay, first underscore name, which is varchar of 30 characters. Okay, if I execute this one, it's gonna add up to that particular table. So let me go ahead and refresh this table. Okay, if I open up these columns, you would now see the first name. Okay, the same way, I would also like to copy the same statement and add the last name too. Okay, I would say last underscore last name. So let me alter it again. And now if I refresh my table back again in this particular column, so I should see the last name. Okay, now I don't want the first name and last name, but I do have these two columns, but I don't want this one, right? So let's go ahead and drop the name column. Okay, how can I do it? I'll say drop column. Okay, what is the column name? Okay, first of all, you have to alter the table because it's inside the table, right? So let's alter table dbo.student drop column and the column name. So if I execute it together, okay, and then refresh the columns folder itself, I would see that the name is lost, right? So this is how my manager wants it. Okay, so now when I go back to my manager and he says, okay, Handeep, you have done a lot of mistakes. I want the name column to be upper letter and this one is to be lower letter and all those things. So now I'm all confused. I don't want to have this table. I want to build it from the scratch again. So how would I do it? I would just drop this table. Okay, say dbo.student. That's it. It's gonna go get dropped. Right, so if I execute this all together, it's gonna get dropped, no more table. So that's a little background about the create, alter, drop. We'll talk about the truncate in later classes, but as of now, have you understood what I have did with the create, alter, and drop commands of the tables? And you could use this DDL commands everywhere. Every single object in here could be defined, which is created, could be altered, would be modified, and if you don't like it, you can just drop it. Okay. So far we are through this DDL statements, right? Any questions so far? So these are the clear syntaxes, right? No confusion on that.
No, sir.
Okay, looks like good, very good. So let's go back and create. I could even build a table with a designer itself. Okay, I can just right click in here and say new table. Okay, without writing this syntax. But you being hired as a developer, they expect you to write the syntax and all. So I'm just giving you a cheat way. Okay, which is, as this is more like a GUI tool and all, you could use this things to build up the statements and all. So let's say if I'm gonna give it an first name, which is again varchar of 50, let's say 50, and then again last underscore name varchar of 50. Okay, so if I go ahead and say generate change script, it's going to generate a script for you. So in here, this is the middle part, that which is more important. Okay, let's copy this one. I can say, you want to save changes? No. Either you could save this automatically. So if you click the save, it's going to ask the table name. I could say student itself and then say okay. It will generate me. Okay, generate my table in here. If I refresh my tables here, you can see my student table back in here. because that's one way. Either you could copy the script. For sometimes there would be a case where you don't have access to create tables in a designer view. So at that point you could script it and just paste it in this way, where you could grab the script information from the designer and then just paste it so that you know what you have created and all those things. Okay. So in here, when system generated the syntax, it also added this thing, a single line in here, right? On primary. Why is that? Because let's say if you go back and see your database properties on the files, there are two groups, right? Primary and not applicable. So it is trying to put it on the primary, which is a data file, .mdf file. So that is the reason why it has kept this on primary. Even as you only have one file, even though if you do not mention it, it's going to put it on the same file itself, right? Let's say if you have multiple files, then at that point you should mention the file group name or whichever file you want to put it on. Okay. So that's another way to create table. Okay. Let's say there is already an existing table. You could just right click onto it and say design. Okay, which would again bring it up to here, which is again a designer view. So let's say if I'm going to change my column name from ID to /ID IDs, okay, or I would say just add names, first names and last names, just as a spell typo mistake or something like that. And I could either generate a script, okay, which would again give me some kind of syntax where I would be using to rename my columns. Okay, that's one way to do it. Or you could, yeah, that's the only way. If you're trying to rename the columns and all, you would use some code to rename it. Okay, or just do something like this one. Open this one. Okay, refresh again. Just open the columns. Double click onto it, or just right click on it and say rename. There is an option here where you would be able to rename the columns and all. But it's not a good practice. You have to be sure when you create tables. That's when you have to be sure what the column name is going to be. Okay. Even though you have access, unless until somebody approves it, do not change the column name. So that would end up with a lot of complications and all. Okay. That being said, let's continue about the DML statements. Okay. What are DML statements? We have the other commands we have in this here are select, insert, update, and delete, right? So let's talk about it one by one. So as of now, we have this particular table, which is student. So how do you see whether it has a data or not, right? So for that, I would be using select star from dbo.student. Okay, with the help of a select statement, I can see whether the student table has some kind of information or not. Let's say there is no information in there. I have this other command which is called insert. With the help of it, I can go ahead and insert the data, right? Insert into, the syntax of insert goes as insert into dbo.student. Okay, so and then again values. Let's say 1 Sandeep, and his last name is going to be K. Okay, if I execute this particular statement, what's going to happen is it's going to insert the values inside this particular table. Okay, which has these columns, right? For ID, first name, and last name. So if I go back and run this select statement, I can see that there is a record inserted in there. Now, this way, I just inserted the one record with the ID 1 and the Sandeep and K, right? Which are default and the default in order too. Okay, let's say if I have written this syntax in a different way, saying I only supply 2 values. Okay, let's say I did only supply 2 values, which is 1 and DK. That if I try to run this one, what's going to happen is it's going to say that the number of columns you supplied and the values are not matching the definition of the table. Right? So in order not to get that kind of errors, what could you do is you could specify which columns you want to place these values in. I would say int and first underscore name. All right, then I could close this bracket. If I execute this way, what's going to happen is it's going to insert that record, but on the last names column, it's going to insert a null value in here. The table definition itself says that if you do not supply a value, it's going to be a null value in there automatically, right? So whereas in here, the first statement, we did not mention the order and we did not mention what it is what, right? It defaultly assumed that this is going to be an ID, this is going to be first name, and this is going to be last name. Whereas on the second time, when we didn't give the exact column names in order, it got confused and it said like, okay, you have 3 columns, but you gave me 2 values. Which column you want to place these columns in? Which columns do you want to place these values in? Right? So we gave it an explanation saying this value is going to go into the ID column, whereas this one is all going to go into the name column, the first name column. Okay. In the same way, you could have just said ID and the last name, and then gave it only 2 values, so it would insert in here, right? That's an way. If you have multiple columns and you want to supply only few values, you should just let it know which column is going to be getting what kind of value. Okay, that's number 1. Okay, number 2 is, let's say if I would have just said last underscore name, okay, even then it's gonna fail. Why? Read the error. It's okay, it didn't understand it. Okay, let me change the syntax in this way. So if I say okay, if I run this statement in this fashion, what's going to happen is it's going to fail. It's going to say the ID column, which is an int value, and you're supplying some kind of string in there, which is not a valid value, right? So you cannot have an int which is dk as a value. So it says the type converting has failed, and you cannot insert these values. That's what this error message is saying. Okay, so make sure when you're trying to give it a values, the data types and the values it's going to fit in or not have to be made sure. Okay, that's second level of information. All right, copy this thing. Let me put it back again so that you have an example if you want to ever go back. All right. Just cut this here and just place it. Okay, I'm going to put a comment bad right. Exact column values. I just made a comment for understanding and all. You could delete whatever you want to. Okay, so there is one more way to insert, right? This way we are trying to insert only record by record, which is a tedious process where we don't want it to happen. We want to happen like multiple rows being inserted at once or something like that, right? So how can we do it? I would say you can just go ahead and say insert into dbo.student. Don't mention anything. Just put the values in here, and then I'm going to say to Dave P, and then I'm going to say put a comma and start another set. Okay. That way I can insert multiple records at the same time. Okay. with the help of this statement, I could insert 2 records at once. Okay, I can go as many as with a comma and separated sets. I could push multiple values at the same time. Okay, this is another way of inserting it. Okay, there is one more called, there is another two other keywords. One is select into. Okay, this is another way of writing an insert. What will happen in here is, now let's go back and see what are all the information we have in the student table. So let's say if I run this select statement, I would see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 records in this particular table, right? So let's say I want a duplicated table of this, the existing table students. I want a duplicated copy of it. Okay, I want to copy each and every row of this table into a new table. Okay, the easiest way I could do is I could select everything off of it. Okay, select star, and I would say into dbo dot student underscore copy. Okay, if I execute this statement, what's gonna happen is it's gonna create a table student underscore copy with the same exact column, same exact data types and all, and it's gonna insert the data from the student into student copy. Okay, if I refresh these tables, now we got the student copy with same column names. Okay, and the same data types and same data too. Let's say you want to see it, you can either say select star from student underscore copy. Right, that way what would happen is it will build a table for you with the data types whatever you have in this star. Or you could just say let's say if I would have just said ID and first name. Okay, copy underscore 2 columns. What's going to happen is it's going to only build a table with only 2 columns of these data types and then insert those data. You could just refresh these tables back again and see that, right? This one will have only 2 columns, first name and ID, whereas your original table had 3 columns, right? So whatever is in the select list is what the table syntax is going to be structured, and the data type values and all those things would follow from the select statement itself. Okay, so that's select into. Okay, I could write insert in another way. Okay, let's say I have an empty table. Okay, how can I create an empty table? I would use the same syntax. Okay, no, let me do one thing. I would script this thing to create. All right, so that way I know I can create a table. Okay, there you go. And I'm going to say this as copy. Okay, I already have a copy table. Okay, let me name it as student2. If I execute it, now I'm going to see my student2 table. Okay, Vinay and Bharat, you got me right. When we created a copy and copy 2 columns, do you have any questions at that point, or was it clear?
Yes, Sandeep.
It's clear, yeah.
Clear, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and drop this table because I don't want to create any mess and make you lose your understanding. Okay, so let me drop this table in here.
Sandeep, one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sandeep, now you have entered the values for 2 columns, right?
Right.
The ID. understand. If we have more than 5 columns, or suppose you say 10 columns, so are we going to do it in a CUI manner, or is there any other way that we have to enter the values? So how we going
Uh,
to?
I didn't get your question yet. When you say you would have more than 2 columns in a select list.
No, not about the copy thing. If you
Uh-huh.
have to enter the values, like if you have to insert values into another 2 new columns, or suppose say it can be like total 10 columns in a table.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have 5 and we have added 5 more few new columns. So how we gonna enter those total 10 columns like at a time? Are we going to enter it, or is there any other way to do it?
You're trying to say is, first of all, you built a table with 5 columns, right?
Right, right,
Then again, you altered the table to add another 5 columns.
right, right.
Okay. Now,
So
when you build the table for the 5 columns, you have entered a values for those 5 columns respective with the rows information.
right,
Now you want to fill up the rest of the other 5 columns for each of those rows, right?
right, right.
So basically, when you alter and add columns, the first way we did it this way,
Yeah.
what's gonna happen is it's gonna create a null value based columns.
Okay.
Okay. In this example, we have the students table, right? Okay. Let me go ahead and do a select on the student table. What we're gonna find is this information, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna add one more column, say marks or something like that. Okay. How can I do it? Easy ways to go here. Say edit table. I could write a syntax too, but okay, this is not gonna work. So I could say alter table dbo dot student add marks, which is an int column. That's it. So if I run this thing, what's gonna happen is it's gonna add the column to the student table. Okay. So let me refresh this one. If I open it up, you can see the column marks, right? So,
Yeah.
but if I do a select on this students table, what you're gonna see is all null for the marks column.
Yes.
So you have to identify each single row and update it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Oh yeah. So that's about the DDL statement back again. But in the DML statements, with the help of insert, we were trying to create a table, add columns and all those things, right? Values and all. So you don't have any questions on the DML level, right?
No, no.
Okay. So very good. So let's say I have created this table, right? Student 2. Let me do a select on it. I don't know whether if I have any information. Let me do a select. Okay. So this table is an empty table. The student 2 is an empty table I have in here. Okay. So the way to insert data into that an empty table. Okay. If you try to run this statement again, what it's gonna say is, we have already created a table for you. If you wanna, and then it's gonna fail. Okay. So when you're trying to write select into statements, select and into statements, it's only gonna work for the first time. Second time with the same table name, it's gonna say already object existing.
So even if we delete that table from the Explorer, or let's say we drop that, it will still not accept it. You will have to put some other names.
You could drop the table and rerun the select statement. It would create a table for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but the problem in there is in the real-time world, we do not have 1 row, 2 rows. We have millions of rows in there, right? Which is information. You cannot say, oh, I don't like this table, I'm going to drop it.
Yeah.
Okay. In the real-time scenario, what's going to happen is you either take a backup of the table, rename the table, or something like that would happen. You would not delete it.
Yeah, but
Unless until you that is the only scenario you would have where you want to delete it forever. Good. You don't want the data. you can delete it too. But yeah, in our example, what I'm trying to tell you guys is to insert a values into an existing table. How could you do it from we have the student table which has the information. We have another student table too which do not have any information. We want to load from here to here. How could I do it? I can just say insert into dbo dot student2, and then I would say select star from dbo dot student. If I run this combinedly, whatever values I'm going to get out of here are going to get inserted in here. Okay, I did click something. Oh, okay, hold on. Cancel, close different window. Okay, yeah, let me execute it together. Okay, now it says number of columns applied are wrong columns. Why are they wrong? In here we have ID, first name and last name, and in here we have ID. Okay, there is a marks column, right? So for that you have to have something. Okay, so I'm gonna say ID first underscore name, last underscore name, right? Okay, now it's gonna work. This is not a command, so okay. Okay, multiple ways to write insert.
So Sandesh, do we select the table first and then insert into, or do we first do insert into and then do the select?
Okay, how this syntax is converted back into this syntax, that is what so values tarvata ikkada select bracket open chesi values icham kada.
Oh, okay.
So
Instead of
adi
values,
syntax loki convert avutadi. Ikkada nunchi vachina values annitni SQL Server itself is gonna understand that it's gonna get parsed in this way.
got it. Yeah.
So that output is gonna be an input for here.
Okay.
And then it's gonna push all those values into this table 2, student 2.
So
Okay.
It's insert into and then the select one, right? It's
Yeah.
all inserted.
So this is one way, right? Whereas this way, what's gonna happen is it's gonna create a table for you and then insert it.
Okay.
We spoke about almost like 3 or 4 ways to insert values. First way, you do not define the columns, you just push the values into it. This is a blind way, okay? Beginner's way.
Mm-hmm.
You know number of columns and you know the values, so you push it.
Right.
But eventually you're going to land up in a problem because you don't know which column is going to get what kind of data and all those things, right? So you have to make sure that you mention the column names and the values at the same time, so that you are aware of that ID is going to go into this one is going to go into this column, and the DK is going to go into this column.
Okay.
That's a good way.
Yeah.
So let's say this way is boring because you can only insert one value at a time.
Yeah.
Then you put a comma in here and put multiple sets. Then it's gonna let you insert multiple records at the same time. That's a little interesting because you insert multiple records at the same time. You don't have to type insert into multiple times, right?
Right.
So just for flexibility. So then again, they thought, okay, writing this one is more tedious because they have to type a lot of recorded information. If they have an information somewhere stored and they want to transfer it into another table, build a table for them, so they have created this one. Select into.
Got it. Yeah.
How this is going to work is you have to select certain columns from a table, and just before the from clause you're going to put into and the table name, right? So at whatever is in the select clause, the columns, all those data types will be built up as a table. Okay. Whatever table name you're going to do, give it after the into value, and then it's going to insert all the records from there.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the third way. Assume it as a third way. And there is one more way. You cannot create tables all the time, right? So let's say there is a table 2 which is already built. At that point, you cannot use this statement because every time you run it, it's going to create a new table for you. That's not what an ideal situation is. You have a table and you want to insert records, and at that point of time you would use this kind of syntax, which is an easy way to insert values into an existing table.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
You can ask me questions if you have any, or just think about it today. You can ask me tomorrow too. Okay.
No, I think this explains. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Then it's good. Okay, let's talk about the update statement. Okay, the third command we have in the DML is update. Okay, with the help of update, any wrong record we have inserted can be updated or modified. This is at a record level. When I say modify with the DDL statements, it's going to modify the structure itself. Let's say you have a 50 space width column and you want to upgrade it to 60 because some of the names would not fit in the 50 characters. You want to upgrade it in the structure. That is a DDL statement. That is alter. Whereas if you want to modify a data, which is an update command, which is pretty much about DML, data manipulation, okay, you would use an update keyword. Make sense, right?
Yes.
Okay. So how would you use an update statement? Update table name. Okay. So I would say, as all of my students are new students, I would give them 100 marks. Okay. Update table set marks equal to 100. If I run this statement, it's gonna give everybody in the student table 100 marks. Let's run the select statement and see. Okay, all of them got 100 marks. Now I want to give only ID2 guy 300 marks instead of 100. How can I write it? I'm gonna take the same statement. I'm gonna say where ID equals to 2. I would say instead of 100, give him 300. Okay, let's run the select statement and see it. Okay, there you go. The ID2 guy got 300 instead of 100. Make sense, right?
Yeah, so if there's any multiple IDs, say like the ID 1 and 1, right, in this table that we're looking at.
So in this case, let's say if you want to give an ID 1 500, both of those records would get updated to 500. Okay. Unless until you uniquely identify a row as that particular row, you cannot give it. So let's say you want to update one Sandeep to 600, right? So how could I do it? I would say 1 and first name equal to Sandeep. I would update him to 600. If I run that, it's going to update to one single record of it. Make sense, right?
Yeah. Thanks.
If you have to filter, you could use this where conditions and use this operators such as and or, something like that, and then you would be able to, if you can find out one single record, then you can update one single record. Even your filtering criteria would get multiple records. That means it's going to update multiple records.
So we can use multiple wheres as well, right? And then set marks is equal to 600, where ID is equal to 1, where first name is Sandeep, or where something like that, or would it accept it that way?
You're saying you're trying to update marks of a guy, right?
Yeah, instead of using where ID is equal to 1 and first name is equal to Sandeep, can we do ID is equal to 1 and then the next line where first name is equal to Sandeep?
No. You have to write only clauses at once. Select from, where. Those
Okay.
are all clauses, right? You can only type once
Okay.
these keywords, but you can join this condition and this condition using an AND operator.
Is there any limit as to how many we can link like that, or is
There is no limit. You could put hundreds of ANDs.
okay? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. No problem. So that's an update statement. Okay. You could also understand the delete in the same way. Let's say if I want to delete from table, okay, dbo dot student2. If I run it without any where condition, what's going to happen is it's going to delete all the record from the student2 table. So if I go back and say select star from student2, I'm going to get nothing. Because I have deleted all of its records, right? There is nothing in this table. Whereas if I have written something like a delete from table using some kind of where clause, I would have deleted only one single record or whatever falls in that where condition category. So delete from table student where id equals to 1. That's gonna drop 2 rows, which is 1 and 2. All right, yeah. So if I go back and try to do a select out of it, I'm gonna go left with only 3 rows. The other 2 rows are gone. The ID ones are all gone. Makes
Yeah.
sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. As of now, we'll stop here. Okay. And let's continue tomorrow.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.